The final item of business today is a members' business debate on motion number 3284 in the name of George Adam on Renfrewshire Witch Hunt 1697, shining the light for community-based events. This debate will be concluded without any questions being put. Would those members who wish to speak in the debate please press the request to speak buttons as soon as possible. And Mr Adam, if you are ready, I'll call on you to open the debate, please. Up to 7 minutes, please.
Thank you very much, Presiding Officer. You may or may not be aware that we do have some visitors here tonight, and they're slightly different from the normal visitors. Now, be rest assured that Doctor Who may be back on the television, but he didn't drop off our visitors here tonight, although Stephen Moffat, who writes the show, is actually from Paisley. It's not one of these things. It's actually the Paisley Development Trust and the Renfrewshire Witch Hunt project of 1697. Now, the whole point of this actual project was one that was quite unusual for me, because it dealt with something called cultural planning, which was a new issue for myself and something I was quite cynical about. Everyone in Paisley hears the story of the witches in 1697, but very few of us up until this year would probably be able to tell you the full story and what actually happened and the year it happened. I was told by my own father about Maxwelton Cross in Paisley was where the final resting place was, and there was a horseshoe put in the middle of the road, and we were always told that that was where the witches were buried. And as a child, it's something that always captures your imagination. Children to this day, when you tell them that story, they actually do want to know more. But my father was a storyteller, and I actually, as I became an adult, I started to doubt a lot of the things that he said. In fact, if you've ever read the book by Daniel Wallace, but Big Fish, about a father and son as they get older, it was a very similar relationship we had to that. And it got to the stage where although we did watching a movie and the two of us great all the way through it right enough, but that's another thing entirely. West of Scotland men bubbling as usual. But one of the things that we did about this was the fact that when I found out that the story was true and we learned about it, my cynicism became, I could see the benefits of cultural planning and how we could actually use it as a lever to develop our economy locally, and especially in a town like Paisley, but not just in Paisley. There's stories like this throughout Scotland, no doubt other members will tell us about, and that can be used in this way. Now, this was a new festival for Paisley, and there was 1,000 people attended on the day, and it was a fantastic event. We were lucky with the weather, and it almost had as many people as another famous Paisley event, Small Shot Day, which is a historic Paisley festival that's been going for a long, long time. But Liz Gardner of Fable Vision always goes on about community planning and how we can use this as a way, community-led projects, to regenerate our town. And this is the thing that really got me as the project moved forward. Initially, I was very supportive, said I would help, although being slightly cynical. But then I seen what actually came when the actors got together and started doing the roadshow. They initially went to the museums in Paisley, they went round Renfrewshire schools, and there was also a pack made for Renfrewshire Education Department by Claire Cassidy, a young teacher from Renfrewshire, and she's going to, some a teacher aid that will be able to use for the Renfrewshire Council Education Department as part of the Curriculum for Excellence. And it's also something that will be used for primary school children and secondary school children. And it went into the story in great detail. Like Christine Shaw, who was a young accuser, was an 11-year-old young woman, and she actually she accused these people of witchcraft. And one of the things that the children are asked is, did she have a mental health condition? Was she actually possessed? You know, and it gives them a chance to debate the whole history and idea. And again, it's something that young people in particular, it just lightens their imagination and wants them to learn more about what happened in their local area and what's happened. So the other things that can lead to is cultural tourism, because obviously we only have to look at the 1697 was actually happened 5 years after Salem in America, which is a lot actually more famous than the Paisley one. So it makes you think that they've actually got a whole tourism strategy around the one issue that they had there as well. So when you look at it, my own family have been in Paisley since 1759, my paternal side, and it just shows you that's when records began, so no doubt they might have been there during that period. But the whole point you have to ask yourself is, you know, we could possibly have an opportunity throughout Scotland of getting people to come home to seek out their past, cultural tourism, and ensure, I know it's something the Cabinet Secretary has constantly talked about over the past year or so. But the cast are here today, and I hope to do some of the story some justice. In 1697, there was a young girl, Christian Shaw, the daughter of the Laird of Bagarn, complained about being tormented by a number of local witches. On the 17th of August, 1696, she caught Catherine Campbell, one of the family's servants, stealing some milk. And Catherine Campbell and her, she reported it to her mother, and Catherine Campbell actually, I think she said, wished her devil to take her soul to hell. Well, I think it was actually more brutal than that, and it was done in Old Scots, but I won't do it. The actors here would probably do it a lot better. And once they get the funding for next year, if you all come to Paisley around about June the 9th or 10th, next year you'll be able to see the story in its entirety. But the whole story went on, and over the weeks, as things progressed, they actually believed that she was possessed. They took her to a doctor in Glasgow who said there was nothing they could do. And then it got to the stage where they actually believed that the young woman was possessed. So as this went forward, they ended up, the whole presbytery arrived in Paisley and decided it was indeed witchcraft. Now, we're talking about 1697. We're only talking 10 years before the Act of Union, and we are actually burning people or killing people for actually being witches. It just seems, you know, maybe we weren't in a good frame of mind to actually go for the Act of Union in 1707. But 7 people, 7 people, Margaret Lang, John Lindsay, James Lindsley, John Reid, Catherine Campbell, Margaret Fulton and Agnes Naismith were found guilty of having bewitched Shaw and were condemned to death. One subsequently committed suicide by hanging himself in his prison cell. Another 6 were hanged and then burnt in the Gallow Green in Paisley on June the 10th, 1697, the last mass execution of its kind for witchcraft in Western Europe. Now, one of the things I think we have to look at is when everything went through, although it was great to watch the story unfold as the actors showed us what happened on these days, the young people went from actually looking at it as an act of pantomime. You know, it went from burn the witches, to they did such a great job that outside Paisley Abbey, when the court scene was actually acted, they went through the scene. Children were shouting words like mercy, mercy, and they were actually so involved in the story of the thing because it was something local to them and they understood it. And that was one of the things that I found. It was fantastic from every one of the actors that did something on the day, but it's something I think we could do in a greater way, also locally in Paisley, but in other places in Scotland as well. We have so many stories that we can tell, and our young people can get so involved and proud of their local heritage, not just national at Scotland, but also what we've actually got there available as well. But in closing, Presiding Officer, what this project has done is create another great festival for Paisley. Community planning is a fantastic lever, an opportunity for us to regenerate towns throughout Scotland. And Scotland has, as I've already said, many stories to tell, and they can lead to tourism opportunities, educational opportunities for our young people, and a chance to embrace our past, the good and the bad.
Many thanks. Many thanks. I now call on Neil Bibby to be followed by Graham Day.
Thank you, Presiding Officer. I'd like to start by thanking George Adam for bringing forward this debate this evening, and certainly on the Labour side of the chamber, myself, Mary Fee and Hugh Henry were very keen to support his motion. I think it's important we take the time to recognise not only the success of local events, but also the significance to the community and the dedication and hard work of those involved in the organisation and delivery of them. There have been a number of excellent events in Renfrewshire over the summer, and I think the Renfrewshire Witch Hunt was a new and the newest and most innovative event on the Renfrewshire events calendar. As has been said, the Renfrewshire Witch Hunt event in June was a huge success, with an estimated 1,000 people coming out to support it, and a number of volunteers giving up their time to help reenact what was an event of real historical significance in Paisley's history, and perhaps educate people about what perhaps was one of the darkest chapters of our local history. It's also important to note that the event on the 9th of June did not stand alone, and it was in fact the culmination of a near year-long series of works by the Paisley Development Trust, a trust that was formed to take forward community renewal through the arts and cultures. It's undoubtedly the case that Paisley Town Centre has benefited from most of their projects to date, and that is something I'm sure will be welcomed across the chamber. One of the most interesting parts of the project, as George Adam has already mentioned, was the inclusion of a school pack and a touring exhibition. These kinds of initiatives are equally important when it comes to local engagement and generating interest in local history as well as events and activities. I would therefore like to congratulate everyone at the Paisley Development Trust for their work on this project and the wider work they continue to do to benefit Paisley. I was pleased to hear that everyone who attended the feedback session following the Renfrewshire Witch Hunt event agreed there should be an annual reenactment, and I'm certainly looking forward to attending in the years to come. Of course, we mustn't forget the financial contributions made by individuals and organisations, including the Heritage Lottery Fund and Renfrewshire Council, which makes these projects possible. Community events have a wide range of positive effects, bringing local people together, providing entertainment and activities, and often generating a small boost to the local economy. With this in mind, I was pleased to see a range of upcoming events on the Renfrewshire Council website. This site lists events in a wide range of categories, from community events to comedy and books to business. I was also particularly pleased to see a section dedicated to events aimed specifically at young people. All levels of government have a role to play in encouraging and supporting community-led events, and I hope a number of events in the future will prove just to be successful as the Renfrewshire Witch Hunt. Finally, Presiding Officer, I'd like to thank the Paisley Development Trust and all the volunteers that are here today and the ones that aren't here, who contributed to what was a fantastic family day out, and I look forward to more successful community-led events in Paisley and across Renfrewshire in the future.
Thank you very much. I now call on Graham Day to be followed by Annabel Goldie.
Thank you. I'd like to congratulate George Adam on bringing forward this motion, although it is disappointing that he didn't take his lead from the gallery and turn up in costume. It certainly sounds as if the Renfrewshire Witch Hunt 1697 event was an experience well worth having. However, Presiding Officer, can I say to my colleague that such memorable, attention-grabbing historical reenactments aren't just confined to Paisley or Renfrewshire. In Angus, we have a tradition stretching back to 1947 of reenacting another famous moment in Scottish history. That was when the Arbroath Abbey Pageant Society, which 5 years ago became Arbroath Abbey Time Themes, was formed to commemorate the signing of the Declaration of Arbroath. April 6 is, of course, the big date in their calendar, with a reenactment stage just outside the Abbey. I've attended a couple of these and even had my picture taken with Robert the Bruce. Now, I'm not someone who normally seeks such mementos, and indeed the only other famous person I've had a picture taken with, which I treasure, is Bruce Foxton. And while some in this chamber will be asking Bruce who, I know the Cabinet Secretary with her impeccable taste in music will concur that that is indeed a photograph worthy of treasuring. There's something particularly special about the reenactment of the signing of the Declaration when it occurs at the Abbey. But time themes are active throughout the year and throughout the area in bringing to life the events of 1320. They are regular attendees at various houses and castles across Angus and the Mearns, and earlier this year they were asked to stage a reenactment in front of Glamis Castle at the gathering to celebrate the Queen's Diamond Jubilee. But Time Themes' engagement with the public goes beyond that. They take the Declaration signing and its significance into schools across the county. Participants attend in full costume with a range of items to help explain what life was like in medieval Scotland. Pupils are allowed to dress up. The role of each of the characters involved, the barons, the knights, the monks, etc., are explored, along with food, living conditions and farming of the day. And the children stage a Declaration signing of their own. Through their engagement with Time Themes, a number of schools have gone on to produce artwork relating to the signing of the Declaration, and some of these items are on show at Arbroath Railway Station. The Time Themes is a strictly non-political organisation that performs a fantastic service in bringing to life a hugely significant moment in Scotland's history. And I know they're absolutely delighted to have been offered the chance by Historic Scotland to help add to the visitor experience at the Abbey. Historic Scotland have advised members that they're welcome to attend the Abbey in costume at any time to help assist in getting across the story of the Declaration to visitors. Presiding Officer, I very much welcome the opportunity this motion has provided to highlight the work of volunteers such as Time Themes and those involved in the Renfrewshire Witch Hunt 1697 in raising awareness of significant moments in this country's history and making them seem that little bit more real. I must confess, until this debate came along, I was largely unaware of the case of the Bargaran witches, its parallels with events in Salem some 4 years earlier, and the fact Paisley staged the last mass execution for witchcraft in Western Europe. And I wish I'd been able to attend the reenactment, if only to see how they were able to stage the scenes where Christian Shaw is said to have who pulled straw, coal, gravel, chicken feathers and cinders from her mouth. In conclusion, Presiding Officer, can I congratulate those behind local reenactments, such as those in Paisley and Angus, and support the closing lines of the motion, which encourage other towns, cities and villages across Scotland to follow their lead.
Thank you very much. I now call on Annabel Goldie to be followed by Christine Graham.
Thank you, Deputy Presiding Officer. Can I too thank George Adam for this debate? His motion both eloquently celebrates an event of great historic significance to Paisley, and it highlights the wider benefits of such occasions to all communities. And I might observe, Deputy Presiding Officer, in relation to our visitors this evening, that proceedings in this Parliament can be very unpredictable, so who knows what might unfold during this debate. As a small child, my parents regularly pointed out to me the circle in the Paisley Street where the charred remains of the last perpetrators of witchcraft were buried, and that became part of my local folklore. And as both George and Graham have said, the unfortunate individuals had allegedly bewitched an 11-year-old girl, Christian Shaw, and she was a Bargaran girl. Bargaran lies between my home village of Bishopton and the town of Erskine, and she was supposedly a smart and lively girl. Well, we're all like that in my area, Deputy Presiding Officer, and testament to that in the gallery this evening. And she alleged she'd been cursed by the servant Catherine Campbell, and as a consequence, poor Christian took fits. She saw strange visions, she levitated, she claimed others were torturing her body. Well, we've not seen any of that in this Parliament, at least not yet. And as both George and Graham said, an unhappy fate awaited the perpetrators. One convicted miscreant, James Reid, hung himself in his cell, and the remaining 6 were strangled at the stake on the Gallow Green in Paisley. Then their bodies were burned on a blazing bonfire, and afterwards their charred remains were buried at Maxwelton Cross at a site marked by a horseshoe in the circle of cobblestones to which I referred. All, of course, gruesome, ghastly and ghoulish, but in its own way a rich cultural legacy. And what became of young Christian? Well, she went on to become a successful businesswoman and manufacturer of thread, and with her mother, they became the founders of Renfrewshire's textile industry. But on Saturday, 9th June 2012, Paisley Town Centre returned to 1697, and every citizen of Renfrewshire was invited to dress in historic attire, come into town and join in the reenactment of the event. And the Renfrewshire Witch Hunt of 1697, which was spearheaded by the Paisley Development Trust, as has already been said, involves schools, businesses and community groups. And I think our visitors this evening are an impressive representation of the event. Deputy Presiding Officer, I do believe that community-based events like this are vital to community spirit. They encourage pride in the local area and they nurture relationships across all sectors of society. So whether it's the witch hunt in Paisley or the annual Papingo shoot at Kilwinning Abbey or the Bishopton Gala Day or a street party for the Diamond Jubilee, I congratulate everyone involved in such community activity who demonstrate such community spirit. Far too often, Deputy Presiding Officer, we're told community spirit is dead. Well, that's certainly not what I see. There are countless examples of it to be found in the west of Scotland, from the events in Paisley to community fairs, gala days, school fetes, charitable events, to volunteers who clean up beaches, villages, urban spaces, or just give of their time to help others. Recent visits for me have been to voluntary concerns in Largs, to Engage Renfrewshire, to the Renton Community Development Trust, the Eastern Bartonshire Volunteer Centre, the Hesslehead Wildlife Treatment Centre, all of that made possible by volunteers. So, Presiding Officer, I congratulate and support the Paisley Development Trust and everyone involved with the Renfrewshire Witch Hunt of 1697 event, including our visitors in the gallery this evening. And I also congratulate all those in our local communities who go that extra mile to support their local heritage and identity, to sustain their local culture and to foster community spirit so that their communities can flourish.
Many thanks. I now call on Christine Graham, after which we move the Cabinet Secretary to close.
I want to take, congratulate George Adam on bringing this motion. I want to take to the Witches of Galloway. I went to a part of the River Cree once where I lived, and was told that their 3 witches had been tied to stakes in the middle of the river, which is tidal, and when the tide came in, if they drowned, they proved they were not a witch, and if they survived, they were a witch. Well, there you are. Heads you lose, tails you lose. That was the story for witches. I have to confess, Deputy Presiding Officer, had I been living in the 17th century, I have no doubt I'd have qualified for the title witch. I live alone. I have a black cat. It has fangs, evil eyes, and answers when you speak to it with a variety of yowls. He also weaves in and out between my feet as I try to walk, squawking as he goes and responding to my comments. Now, in the 17th century, I would have been wearing a long skirt, and the cat seen weaving in and out between my long legs and my long skirt and yowling would have been deigned to be the devil in feline form. Sometimes that is all it took to be condemned as a witch appearances. However, I'd probably also have been just as outspoken, which wouldn't have helped. I make a serious point, which was reflected as George Adam came towards the conclusion of his speech, where the children changed from seeing it as a pantomime to something where they were engaged with the actual demise of real people who were at persecution, injustice, superstition, the dark and sombre side of parts of our history. Unfortunately, in some parts of the world, this still persists, although the title witch may not be given to the people who have the same kind of fates. Sorry to end on such a serious note, because some people actually think I still have witch-like qualities.
For others to judge. Now call on the Cabinet Secretary, Fiona Hislop.
Thank you, Presiding Officer. I'd like to congratulate George Adam for securing this members' debate and also welcome our visitors. And by highlighting the event, he has brought members' attention in what I thought was a very interesting contribution to the vital role played by local communities in preserving our nation's rich history and the way they make our heritage come to life with entertaining and engaging activities. Our nation's story has some inevitable dark periods, as sadly was the case of the Bargarran witches, but it is testimony to our local communities' desire to retain and own their part of the nation's story that we see events such as the Paisley Witch Trial reenactments still gripping the local and national psyche. 7 Paisley residents, as a result, as we heard, of a trial statement, were arrested, later found guilty under witchcraft legislation and all sentenced to death, where they were hanged and then burned on the Gallow Green in Paisley. And across Scotland, it is estimated that up to 4,000 innocent individuals were accused of witchcraft and killed in the years 1560 and 1707. And we've just heard from Christine Graham. She spoke of the Galloway witches. And history may provide the facts. Our national records hold some of the accounts. However, it is the communities that we look towards to maintain a living memory of our history. The passion which exists locally for local history, combined with the determination to keep alive the part that towns and communities played in Scotland's rich story, no matter how small, ensures that a living memory is retained. And both Annabel Godey and Neil Bibby reflected that in their contributions. For example, this year, Historic Scotland has appointed 3 tourism and community managers covering the properties in North, Central and South regions. Their focus is to work with community groups, schools and colleges and external partners such as Visit Scotland and destination management organisations and local tourism groups to build and develop business links with joint promotions to help raise awareness of what Historic Scotland can contribute to what I think is a growing area of cultural tourism, which quite clearly, as George Adam pointed out, also has an economic benefit. The events that take place, the public programmes at sites of Historic Scotland's responsibility, explore how we can link with other events, activities happening across the country. I think that's a very positive step. And Graham Day, when he spoke about Arbroath, is also an example of an MSP who's engaged very actively with Historic Scotland in his own area to try and maximise the impact, both culturally and in heritage and in economic terms, to help his constituency. Of course, there are a number of events which are community-based, which help tell the story of places in Scotland. The Durlton Castle Witch event tells the story of a family audience of the East Lothian witch trials of the 16th and 17th centuries. Now, over 400 people attended that, but I suspect from George Adams' figures, I think the Paisley event might have outnumbered that one. The Halloween in Huntly at the end of October presents an innovative community-led event organised by the arts agency, Devon Arts, in collaboration with Historic Scotland, local schools and the wider community. And they have a masked pipe band lit by lanterns and a creepy ceilidh for all the family. Of course, following the success of Macbeth at St Andrews Castle in April of this year, the St Andrews University Production Company asked if they could return to Inchcolm Abbey as part of the Edinburgh Fringe Festival, as Inchcolm is referred to, of course, in the play. Last performed on the island in the 1980s, Historic Scotland officials worked in partnership with the production team and agreed that the university team could work collaboratively to see this most famous of plays return to Inchcolm. Elgin Cathedral will enjoy a series of carol concerts performed this year as a result of local youth bands and churches approaching Historic Scotland officials to request that the cathedral be made available to support their wishes. And as well as Historic Scotland, Creative Scotland also works tirelessly to engage communities in order to offer the most diverse range of cultural events as possible. Festivals are wonderful celebrations, and Scotland truly is a festival nation. We have over 370 festivals this year alone, large and small, all kinds, and taking place year-round across the length and breadth of the country. These festivals emerge each year, and new festivals emerge, and alongside existing events. They're all now brought together in an extremely useful annual guide produced jointly by Creative Scotland and The List. Scotland's festivals span a range of activities and different forms of entertainment, visual performance and literary arts, food, heritage, sport and multimedia events. Not, of course, to forget the festival politics, which has just finished in this very building. And, of course, we also have Imaginate, the Children's Festival each May, and the new Festival of Arts and Ageing to be held for the first time this Scotland, and also in different parts of Scotland. And also the 12 festivals held annually in Shetland, to those in Dumfries and Galloway and the Western Isles and the Scottish borders. And community-based festivals play a very important role, as we've heard, in the health, well-being and cohesion of our places. And Creative Scotland, our national agency for the arts and creative industries, has established its touring, festivals and arts programming investment stream. And this programme develops the opportunities for audiences to access the arts through new festivals and events and programmes. And there are a number of them, and I think I would encourage members to take that up on their behalf for their own festivals. Over the winter and autumn months, there will be different events and festivals based around Halloween, the changing seasons, or, as we've heard, local historical events, such as Viking raids, another focal point for local legends and traditions. And the planning, preparation and enjoyment of these events ensures that people meet and engage with one another and helps bring the community together and tell the story of Scotland and their local places. So researching local heritage, devising events, making costumes, props, floats, these activities all bring together families and the wider community working together to make a successful festival. And Annabel Goldie was correct to praise the volunteering that takes part involved in that. Sometimes, yes, it brings economic benefits. Sometimes it's to raise money for local charities, and that's a very important part of participation. You've all heard of Up Hellier in Shetland. Increasingly, we're seeing a revival of Celtic pagan traditions around the Beltane, ushering in springtime. And lastly, I would mention Scotland's History Festival, held in November each year, and that brings together many talks and events presenting episodes of local and national historical importance in unexpected ways and a wide variety of places. And audiences and participants alike can find these experiences add substantially to their experiences and their understanding of cultural activities and what it can bring to local communities. But at the end of the day, I think we need to reflect on the source and sometimes, as we've heard, the suffering which comes from our heritage, and to recognise that. And I was very struck by, when looking at the story of the Bargaran witches, to hear about the memorial, which has been referred to, which in May 2008, the memorial was built at Maxwell Cross in Paisley, the site where the witches' charred remains were buried. And the bronze memorial with the stainless steel horseshoe embedded in it includes the inscription, "Pain inflicted, suffering endured, injustice done." And I think on that note, Presiding Officer, we can reflect the contribution and the memorial of the reenactments, but also reflect, as George Adam has done, the contribution that festivals can bring in telling all these stories to Scotland.
Thank you very much. I now close this meeting of Parliament.